welcome all of you to the beginning of an exciting new year at VCU. It's so good to all be here together, and I was happy to see everyone at the retreat last month, and I think already we're starting to see the results of that retreat. So it's just really going to be, I think, a good year and a chance to really use the talents of everyone here. As we start, I would like to welcome Justin Mattingly, who is our new Richmond Times reporter, and we're pleased to have him here with us. I also want to remind the board to use the microphones, just as I was just reminded to do that. And for our first item on the agenda, I would move for approval of the agenda and ask for a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All against? The motion carries. Next, I would ask for a motion to approve the minutes as published and for a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Against? The motion carries. We're pleased to be able to start the day with a report from our president, Mike Brown, and I'll turn the meeting over to him.
Okay, great. Thank you, Madam Director, members of the board. I want to do a couple of things that I typically do and start out at this point in the year by introducing to you our representatives who are our leaders of our people, our primary constituents who we are here for and at the heart of our mission. And I want to start out by introducing to you our undergraduate, quote-unquote, student representative, who is Sarah Isabel. She has a wonderful story that you'll learn more about. Some of you in academic affairs already know a little bit about her. We will tell her story more as time goes on, but she is an enthusiastic representative of our student body, and very, very pleased that you are here. We look forward to your input and the exchange that the board will have the opportunity to have with you. Katie Humphrey is our quote-unquote graduate student representative to the Board of Visitors. I've known Katie for quite a while now, actually. Katie is, like Sarah, one of our superstar students. She is actually about to finish her MD and MJ. Well, I kind of know that because of my own area. So she is one of our star students, and we're looking forward to interacting with her. She's a very thoughtful person, just as Sarah is, and it was great to have the two of them here at these meetings informing us, giving us feedback, but also answering some questions from time to time before we will ask you. So we will ask you all this. Our faculty, of course, is the group who, without whom we could not do. Did I say that right? Without whom we could not. Okay. Fulfill the mission and do our job. And so our primary representative is Holly Price Alford. I kind of put your last name into your first name. Sorry about that. But Holly worked with her for a couple of years as our faculty senate president. She's a great representative, very positive, enthusiastic, engaging person who I think you'll have a good time getting to know better here. And then our alternate will be Scott Street, who is the new faculty senate president. And you'll get a chance to know Scott as well, not just here, but for those of you who are on the Academic and Health Affairs Committee. And our staff representative, one of the ones who keeps us all together while we're all running around, whether it's from a classroom to a laboratory or to a clinic or studio or whatever, our staff is invaluable at Virginia Commonwealth University. And one of the things that's a challenge for a lot of our staff, just as is the case with our faculty, is that we really don't have enough in comparison to the volume that we perform at this institution. And Laura Kochik is our representative. You get a chance to know her very well. She is a very enthusiastic member of the staff senate, and she, well, president of the staff senate, but she's also an important person for you to get to know because she is someone who takes information and leads with it, and very, very thoughtful. And your alternate, I believe, is going to be Nick Betzer.
Correct.
So anyway, thank you very much, Lauren. Lauren, by the way, is a student affairs, a very thoughtful member of our team there. Our newest member of the executive administrative team is Jay Davenport. Jay is over here, and he is actually coming to us a little early. He starts in a couple of weeks, but we identified Jay through a national search. He comes to us from Wake Forest University, where he had brought a lot of leadership to the campaign there, campaign that he felt was successful enough. In fact, I was able to confirm that it has been successful enough under his leadership that he could make the move a little bit early because they are well on their way to their was $1 billion goal. And so congratulations on that. Hopefully we'll be congratulating you on our achievement of our goal too. Ours meeting yours and mine. And so look forward to that. So Jay is this interesting guy who we did a lot of interviewing with and lots of reference checking on just to be sure he's a good fit to the team. And of course, it came out perfectly or he wouldn't be here. But he combines being a really analytical kind of guy with a really big idea kind of personality, but also just a great personality. So we're delighted to have you join the team. And I want to thank Ed Greer for stepping in. Ed is that perfect gentleman who just kind of steps in and does all the right things very thoughtfully. One of the right things that he did is really provide a sense of comfort and confidence to a development team that we built over the years and the systems and structures that we're still trying to iron out. But Ed has done a fantastic job with that, and I really appreciate being able to lean on you and have you help us get a few things done before the days arrive. So, and thank you for stepping in. And then I want to introduce you to Stephanie Hamler, who is actually back from a couple of assignments that she had. So she was at VCU as associate counsel, and then she went back to the AG's office and then became director and general counsel of Virginia Resources. And she's was willing to come back to VCU. The AG and I asked her to do that, and we are delighted that she's back and very, very pleased that we have a good counsel here at VCU. So Stephanie, welcome back to you as well. And look forward to learning lots from you and making lots of headway with your great support. This is an interesting time. I do these introductions. I also talk with you about priorities and where we're headed and the things that we're going to be focusing on. And I'm going to do that. But before I do that, I have to tell you that we are going to talk about some of our priorities amidst a few challenges that we are dealing with. And you have heard through many communications that I have sent out to you about some of those challenges. But I wanted to just give you a quick update and remind you that we are continuing to lead, I think, relatively effectively through some of these things that, obviously I say relatively effectively because you can't control everything, but you certainly can lead at times like this in institutions like VCU, have a special meeting when things like this are going on. One is, of course, the announcement of the end of DACA, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. We saw a little bit of news yesterday. We'll be able to sort of try to determine what all of that means. But in the meantime, VCU does have a relatively small population of DACA students here at this institution. I wanted you to know that I took some time to meet with them and, of course, reaffirmed our commitment to support these students as we would any student at Virginia Commonwealth University. I reminded them of their importance in the landscape of this institution, and that we will do everything that we can to continue our partnership. Our students are our partners. They are who really make this institution what it is in so many different ways. And so, with that, I want you to know that we have sent letters out with Matt's and Kara's help. I've got some letters out to our congressional delegation. We've also continued to communicate with our state government partners. We will continue to do that. For the students, I've connected them with, we have students who had issues with safety, concerns about safety, connected them with our police chief, Governor Nudie. I believe you already have some meetings, or that you're going to soon have meetings. And of course, with government relations, because we want to have the opportunity to coordinate advocacy as an institution around some of the issues that we are facing there. So we'll continue to advocate as strongly as we can for better legal knowledge for our students. The other thing that we're going to do is we're going to look at the potential for the involvement of development of alumni relations to explore scholarship opportunities for those who are interested in supporting students who are doctoral students. The other challenge that we are facing at this point is relatively near to us, and that one of them may happen here soon, and that is what we are hearing about the potential for there to be demonstrations here in the Richmond region, maybe here right here in the city. John Venuti, again, our police chief, is along with the staff, continue to work just delightfully with all of our law enforcement partners. We have Virginia State Police, we have the Capitol Police, and of course the city, Richmond City Police Department. And where necessary, we will of course involve other agencies as well. But our goal is, of course, to keep our community safe. And so one of the things I'm doing is I am communicating with our community about this. I have an obligation to do that, and it wouldn't take me long to want to do that because it's so important to me that we focus on their safety. We certainly want to encourage everyone in our community to speak freely, to express themselves, and certainly to assemble as peacefully as they possibly can and have their point of view heard, points of view heard. But we don't want anyone hurt. We don't want anyone harmed. And so when we hear that there may be a gathering of people around whatever the issue might be, and that there may be some attempt to either harm someone or incite harm or violence, we want to keep our folks away. Meanwhile, we are going to continue to remind everyone of their rights, but we'll also focus on civil and respectful engagement. So I appreciate everyone's support on that. One of the things that happened in the last few weeks that we've had to also give some thought to is a lot of conversation around some of the Confederate symbols that logically would be here as a part of in Richmond. And so I've asked my senior leadership team to do some work around assembling the right kinds of people on various teams to help address some of the issues that we need to address. Some of those issues are, of course, going to be around the immediate safety of people in case there are demonstrations and ways in which people end up getting together that aren't so safe for our people or any people for that matter. But we also have property that we have to protect as stewards of this university. And we're looking at all of that. What we're doing at this point is we are also engaging in what I would call a thoughtful, relatively comprehensive audit of our campuses to determine what kinds of things might exist that we need to address and look at. We're looking at the applicable policies and procedures that may be related as well. Bottom line is we really want to do this right. And in doing this right, we want to be certain that at the center of whatever we do, we protect and hold near and dear our core values of the university community, our commitments to inclusion, free speech, and certainly civil discourse. So there will be more yet to come as we proceed forward with those conversations. But I want to thank my senior leadership team, but I also want to thank, in addition, the thoughtful faculty members who have been involved, and thoughtful students who have been involved, and thoughtful staff. We have had some incredible resources from staff who have great knowledge of the history of this institution. So I thank everyone for all of their support there. So as I transition to priorities, this is the time of the year when we do that, but it's also the time of the year when we kind of have to talk a little bit about some of the things that influence people's thinking about our industry or field, if you will, and that is higher education specifically. And so many of you on an individual basis with me have talked about reading this article or reading that article or picking up this or that magazine that identified the rank of this institution among other institutions and that sort of thing. So I wanted to just kind of put some of that in perspective, because one of the things you've got to keep in mind is that we have made a very strong commitment, and we've been very unapologetic about the fact that we are looking forward as a university in the 21st century in our own context, which is as a research university. And so I want to acknowledge the fact that the public and generally those who have students who are ready to go to college and their families, people want rankings. They want some signal. That's one of the reasons these rankings that people have created over the last 25 years or so have become so popular. People want them. They want something that tells them something. And as you get more and more, this is good news, because as you get more and more of a population involved in going to college, you're going to have that. So it gives us something to think about, because higher education itself has not been as involved in this as with so many of the media outlets. And I think we've got to be thoughtful about what that means. I think there are always going to be rankings of sorts, and we need to be part of that conversation, and I can assure you that we're going to start to set that up. So I'm going to acknowledge that, but I'm also going to acknowledge a lot of the conversations that we've been having right here in this room at nearly every board meeting. What I shared are changing. The population is changing. Just look at what is happening all over the country. Look at what happened in the last election and a lot of the conversation that occurred during that last election. It was about people are changing, and that change is going to accelerate in pace. People, when you take that, put it into the context of higher education, I'll give you my interpretation of it, my acknowledgement that we are at a point where people want more access, they want more engaging learning opportunities, they don't want to necessarily be just sitting down in classrooms, they want to be up on their feet, and they want a sense of purpose. Why am I learning what I'm learning, and how is that going to help me in my role in this community that I am a part of, and how is what I'm doing going to impact that community that I so love and so want to be a part of. And so it's why our core work that Dale and Marcia are leading is so important with our strategic plan. So 2 of you are on the strategic plan committee, so you can connect with us. One of the groups that they've put together is a group that's led by 2 deans. One is here, Monte Fuentes is over here, and Peter Buckley, who is, so Monte Fuentes is the Dean of Humanities and Sciences, and Peter Buckley, who's not here, is the Dean of the School of Medicine. So they co-chair this group that's basically looking at national problems and where do we stand, and how do we want to think about that, and frankly, how do we want to influence a lot of that. And so that becomes very, very important. For that matter, think about your board retreat and the conversations that you had here that Phoebe referred to earlier. And I also want you to realize that in every meeting I've had since then, my cabinet retreat and pretty much every meeting that I've been a part of, we've all been talking about where does VCU stand in all of this. And I got to tell you that VCU has a very confident position on the commitments that we have made and where we stand and how, and what I mean by where we stand is how where we view on our standing. And we've got to keep some confidence about that. And we've got to continue to deliberately focus on the kinds of things that public universities have made a commitment to focus on. If you go back to when public universities really came into being, it was a commitment that we made that we have to be careful not to lose. And VCU is very, very competitive among all research universities in a lot of ways. One really important way that we don't talk enough about is graduation rate. So I met with the secretaries of the Commonwealth and the governor's secretaries of the Commonwealth and the House staff leadership and the Senate staff leadership, and they were focused on one slide in particular that was put up on the board, and it was, wow, how in the world, in just a short time, in less than 10 years, did you go from 48% to 62 or 63% in your graduation rate? Realize that is a 30% increase in that very short period of time in your graduation rate. So that's one thing we've done well. Another thing that we've also done well is in 5 years, not 10 years, 5 years, we've added 2,000 graduates, most of whom stay here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Does that have something to do with our $6 billion economic impact on the Commonwealth of Virginia? I'm guessing it does. By the way, that's a 40% increase, okay? Put that on top of only 5,000 students that we had at that time. So we are making a very, very significant commitment. We're leading among the public research universities in terms of, no surprise, the diversity of our students. And if it's the diversity of our students, it's the diversity of our graduates, most of whom stay here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. We're the largest state university that I know of with as diverse a population. That is, in the context of diversity, a large number of underrepresented minorities in that diversity. Now, one of the things that I wish that we could get the ratings agencies to do is how about like an inclusion quotient, or an inclusion factor, or an inclusion score of some type. Don't you think that when you have that many graduates who you put out into the Commonwealth or into America, that makes a difference in terms of what people have been talking about, wanting to be a part of the great American dream? I should think so. The other thing that I think is a commitment that we make, and we beat a lot of universities on this, is our access to disadvantaged students. So what I mean by that is we graduate a large number of people who were Pell eligible students. So Pell eligible is basically at or below the poverty level. It's in that range. Think about the number of students who we bring. So when you look at the number of Pell eligible, Pell Grant eligible students that we have, it is actually often in excess of what you see at William and Mary, at UVA and Tech, in total number, in-state students. Those become graduates. And is that important to our $6 billion economic impact? I argue yes. So one rankings agency that I appreciate has identified something that really is very important with respect to being a public university in our mission, and that is the Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching. They recognize that VCU is one of those few institutions that's a research university, but is also a highly engaged institution. So we are a highly community engaged institution, so I'm very appreciative of that. The other thing that I'm really appreciative of is that you were so supportive when we made the decision to move forward in lead in undergraduate admissions to a public research university, specifically us, VCU. And when we acknowledged that high school GPA is a far better predictor of a student's success than a standardized test score would be, it really moved us in the right direction. By the way, I've said all the things that I've said with no apology, but I'm also going to tell you, factually speaking, the National Science Foundation ranks all of these institutions in the research university category, private, public, whatever. We're in the top 100, in fact, we're in the top 80. And that's just indisputable. We do very, very well, and that really supports this institution in ways that are critical to us. So this is an important way for us to continue to look at this institution and not abandon ourselves or our mission or the fact that we're a public institution. Now, I got to tell you, in the last couple of weeks, there are other things that have come out and things that will come out in the next few weeks. There are rankings that will focus on putting an enormous weight in that ranking on standardized test scores. If you do that, you know what's going to happen. It's going to correlate specifically to people's socioeconomic status, because I can show you a correlation between how well someone does on standardized tests and what their socioeconomic status is. And you can imagine what it is. The higher your income, the wealthier your family tends to be, the better you tend to do on those standardized tests. Which, again, I find interesting in that there really is not as clear a correlation between one's success in college with test scores as there is with GPA from high school. The other thing that a lot of these folks are going to do who are looking backward at traditional measures of what they think used to predict success in college is they're going to look at how much money
is spent per student. Now, if I'm a public institution, one of the only ways I'm going to be able to get more money to spend on a student is if I charge more in tuition, right? And we have an agreement with students which focuses on what does it take to make certain that we at least meet a threshold of quality in the experience that we have for our students. And so we're there. But if I want to spend more, that's my only way of getting it. I can raise money, and we're going to do that. We're going to raise more money, but that money will probably offset the price that's there now for students, right? Because so many of them have so much more need than we have been able to meet as an institution. So what you're really doing is, again, you're looking at traditional things when you do that, and you're focusing, as a lot of private universities in this country have, on a commitment to a more wealthy population. And that is not necessarily what a public institution does. So it's important for us to stay this course, to stay unapologetically focused on the commitments that we've made. Access as a public university. We've made a commitment, like very few others, even in the state, among publics, to in-state students. We have the largest in-state student population among the universities. Higher need students, we are going to always admit our students blindly. We would never do it any other way. We are always going to be a more diverse student population, and we're going to continue to work on including those students in every way that we can while they're on campus, and certainly preparing them for inclusion in society when they leave. And we're going to continue to focus on impact. That's not something I see anyone really measuring. The Carnegie Foundation, yes, and I really appreciate that. And we're going to continue our other commitments, like being a safety net healthcare organization. Yes, it's tough, but we're going to continue to do that. And so as we go forward, I was thinking about your retreat, and I had an opportunity in your retreat to get your feedback on my priorities as your president, and I really appreciated the opportunity to do that. I wanted to give you a couple of quick updates. So on the top, the first priority that you remember, accessible and real-world education. We are moving forward, thanks to Gail's help, with REAL, which is an acronym. I've got to try to remember what it means, but it basically is about giving students an opportunity to engage in real-world experiences, and now it's a requirement of all of our students who have come in. The development of the undergraduate health sciences major, which Marcia and Gail are working together on. We're going to make more progress with that this year. I'm looking forward to that as well. Remember, VCU, unlike any other institution I know, has the opportunity to be the model of the future in terms of how the most effective learning can occur in the largest population. Now, isn't that what education was all supposed to be about? Is how we function together in society in a civil fashion? And to me, this is our opportunity. I have never worked with a more cooperative or supportive faculty any place I have ever been, or any place that I know. And if you couldn't do this at VCU, I don't think you could do it anywhere. And we are going to do it at VCU, right? And that was not manipulation, because we've already talked about it. So the second thing is collaborative convergent research, which is really trying to bring together, in a gigantic university like we are, you've got all of these rich disciplines that have done lots of things in each of their ways so much and so well. I just finished telling you that we're in the top 100 among NSF institutions. By the way, I'm really pleased to say we broke another record. We've gone over $275 million. Frank, thank you very much for your support with Marcia's and Gail's, but mostly thank you to our researchers for that. So now what I'm going to really start pushing on is how to bring these disciplines together so that we can leverage more funding. How can you be different than a lot of those research universities that are out there that have gotten NIH funding for years and years and years and years and years? One of the ways is to create opportunities for your university to bring the best from all of its disciplines together so that you can benefit from all of those disciplines in the distribution of your findings of that research. So there's scientific distribution of findings, but there are also often very important social implications of that research while you're studying. We're on a roll right now, and I'm really pleased that so many of you sent notes thanking us for and congratulating the university for the work that we've been able to do in terms of bringing engineering, medicine, and pharmacy, and various others together. So pharmaceutical engineering is one of these areas where we've had great success. The Gates Foundation has acknowledged that with another $25 million in a grant that they have just made for the project that you've heard of that's called Medicines for All. Medicines for All is very important because it has significant implications not just for our country, but globally in terms of treatment through the medical approach. I also wanted to mention to you that I'm really pleased that we continue to move forward with collaborative interdisciplinary research, not only within the institution, but outside as well. And we're specifically targeting some of our partners out there, other universities like UVA, and we were also working with other health systems as well. ANOVA is a good example of that, and some of the work that we're doing with them with addiction. The last priority, high-quality health care. No surprise to any of you that that's going to be there, of course, because it's such a huge part of the VCU brand. What that really is all about is taking some of the next steps on this high reliability journey that we've been on for a few years. We've made great strides in terms of moving forward with facilities that will be competitive, with a new outpatient adult facility that will be about 560,000 square feet of clinical space and a large number of parking spaces as well. That facility will probably be close to a total of 900,000 square feet. We've made great strides in terms of patient experience. We've actually had a 15% increase in that in just the last 3 or 4 years. We're not where we want to be yet. We know we're not where we want to be. But if we can use this vision by design, that process that Marcia is leading along with Deborah, to get us to that place in 7 or 8 areas where we can really get a hold of our business as a healthcare organization. It'll help us to be competitive with all of the healthcare organizations that are out there, and we absolutely will be. We're going to be a desired destination at this institution for healthcare. And I don't mean just a destination for Richmond people, I mean a destination, period. And we've got a great opportunity to move forward with high-quality delivery systems that really will be truly unmatchable. I say unmatchable because there really is nothing else for a long radius from Richmond even that's like VCU. This is our opportunity, and we've got to make it happen. So lastly, I just wanted to mention to you, one of the persons who we had sitting at our table oftentimes was a vice president named Wanda Mitchell. Wanda was a delightful person to have involved, very serious, very committed, but just one of the most consummate professionals I've ever worked with, stayed professional through every situation I ever saw her confront or deal with, and we lost her, unfortunately, a little while ago, and many of us in this room were actually gathered to celebrate her life recently. But the Faculty Senate has passed a resolution honoring Wanda, and Holly has asked if she could take a moment to just read that very quickly.
Whereas Dr. Wanda Mitchell came to VCU with over 30 years of experience in higher education and became the inaugural vice president of the VCU Office for Diversity in 2012. Dr. Mitchell was a national leader on diversity and inclusion, and understanding the needs of this university, Dr. Mitchell changed the title of the office to the Office of Inclusive Excellence. And whereas Dr. Mitchell established the Inclusive Learning Council, the Council of Inclusive Excellence, and established Building Inclusive Communities, a peer facilitation process. Also under Dr. Mitchell's leadership, diversity initiatives and goals were integrated within the VCU strategic plan known as Quest for Distinction, as well as she began the process of establishing a new 2017-22 Diversity and Inclusion Strategic Action Plan. Dr. Mitchell believed and advocated that diversity and inclusion should be expressed in words and actions, and fully believed that all members of the community should be valued, no matter their race, religion, disability, gender expression, political affiliation, age, national or ethnic origin, or immigration status. Therefore, the Faculty Senate of Virginia Commonwealth University recognizes the significant contributions of the late Dr. Wanda S. Mitchell The Faculty Senate mourns the loss of such a generous, forward-thinking, and valued leader of the community who was supportive and highly engaged with the VCU Faculty Senate. We will miss her. Passed unanimously by the Faculty Senate September 5th, 2017. Thank you, Dr. Meyer.
Thank you. And Madam Chair, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Rowe. I just want to say to you, Dr. Rowe, that we appreciate so much your leadership and the way you were able to distill for us in 15 minutes something that I know you put an enormous amount of time and thought and energy into as you develop these goals and priorities. And you make us aware of so many things, you inform us, and you inspire us, and we really do appreciate that leadership. We move on now to our committee reports. And as everyone here knows, the real work of this board is done in committee. That's where the heavy lifting happens. And we are really fortunate to have members who are willing to spend the time and to bring their expertise so that we can rely on those committees as they bring forward to us the results of their work. We'll start with the report of the Finance Committee with Bill Ginther, who has worked so long in this area, bringing expertise before he ever came on the board, and then devoted so much to the board that we are very lucky to have his leadership on this committee, and we'll hear his report.
Okay, thank you, Phoebe. That was a nice introduction to my report. We did do a lot of heavy lifting in the Finance and Investment Committee report this morning. We had a lot of things that we had to discuss, and I think everybody got a good feel for what was going on. Several things that we had to do from a housekeeping standpoint was just to review the charter and our yearly plan, which all committees do. We didn't really make any significant changes to that. The second thing we did is SHEV requires all institutions in the state of Virginia to submit every other year a 6-year financial plan, and that was submitted this summer. One of the key things to remember here is that in that financial plan, the boards of visitors are not held accountable for what's in the plan. It's kind of interesting. It's sent to SHEV, but there's no requirement that we stand behind anything that's in the plan. So it's an exercise that gives SHEV the opportunity to see what each one of the universities is thinking. So we saw some of the information there, and that's in your board book. And if anybody has any questions about that, I'm sure that Carol would be happy to talk to you about that. We also had several resolutions that we'll have to have passed by the entire board. One is the Virginia College Building Authority debt financing, and this is for our piece of the debt for the new Allied Health Professions building, which is being built down on the MCV campus. And the total cost of that building is about $87 million. $10 million of that will be our responsibility. Thankfully, the state of Virginia has come up with $76 million of that. So, but we do have to take the action to make sure we do that. Another is a general revenue pledge bond, and this is really to amend a resolution that we did when we approved this bond. We approved it for a specific parking facility, to repair that parking facility. We want to widen that now and allow us to use some of the funds in that bond for any parking facility. So to improve some of the other parking facilities around campus. And again, the committee was fine with that, and we're moving along. A third item is to levy a fee against the quasi-endowment and the Glasgow endowment. The university manages those endowments. We do it through USIMCO. all the other foundations at the university, the money they manage, they take a 1% fee in order to manage it. So every year they take a 1% fee as part of their overhead to manage that money. The university to date has not done that, and Carol and her staff did a lot of research on this and found that most universities who have situations like this do levy a 1% fee. So she asked, and we approved that we would, and we're asking for your approval to levy that 1% fee. That money, that 1% fee every year, would go to fund the development group, to help fund the development group, so that we would be able to continue to have the kind of professionalism and action that we want to have in the development group, and continue with not only the campaign we're in front of today, but campaigns as we move forward. As many of you know, previously we had to go to different foundations and ask them for money to help fund campaigns and that type of thing. And often, rightfully so, those boards would ask us to jump through lots and lots of hoops in terms of were they getting the return on the money they thought they were going to get, and all those kinds of things. This will help that situation and allow us to devote a lot more time to raising money as opposed to trying to raise the money for that particular group. We also had some, I'll call minor architect and engineer selections on 3 different projects, again, that have to be approved. One is for the West Hospital 8th floor, the West Main Street parking deck, and the MCV campus steam line installation. There is a great big steam line that runs through that part of the city that provides energy for most of the MCV campus. Also, we had to look at an amendment to the 6-year capital plan. One, because as I just talked about previously, we need to replace the MCV campus steam line. As you all know, we are building additional buildings down there. We have significant plans to build even more, and so that steam line needs to be bigger. Hasn't been replaced in years and years and years, and is overdue to be replaced. The engineering school had a request to slightly enlarge the size of the project. You all might remember that the engineering school shares a building with the business school, and there is a lawn in what I'm going to call the back of the building. The engineering school is going to build on that lawn in the back, and in the original plan, once they really got things worked out, they needed some additional square feet. So again, it's a minor increase, and all of that will be paid for by the engineering school. There was also an energy performance contract, and this is something that's done by lots of big businesses, lots of schools, where you hire a group who comes in and basically audits all your electricity, the usage of your electricity, makes suggestions on how you can cut down on the amount of electricity, and it's a guaranteed contract where they guarantee you a certain amount of savings over a period of years. So this particular project has a payback in 8 years, and again, good investment, and not only is it the right thing to do from a environmental standpoint, it obviously will save us some money. We also had to approve some procurement procedures. The state of Virginia has 2 procurement procedures that will allow us to move faster and not have to jump through quite as many hoops and go through as much paperwork as we normally go through. And that procedure has to be written, documented, and approved by the Board of Visitors. So that was presented to us. We had a pretty quick discussion on that, and that also will have to be approved. Then also in open session, we had a number of items for information, treasurer's report, revenue and expense summary. And again, all of that is in your book, and anybody who would like to take a look at that should. 2 items I'd like to just mention, though, if I could, is we had a report on the Board of Visitors annual fund as of June 30th, 2017. This is a fund that was started about 6 years ago by then Rector of the Board of Visitors, Tom Sneed. And basically, he asked on a yearly basis for members of the Board of Visitors to make a contribution specifically to this fund. And the reason for that was that as the board of directors got involved in things and decided that they wanted to do something, and they wanted to move quickly, and they wanted to use quote-unquote their own money or the contributions they made to the fund, that could be done. So a great example Dr. Rao talked about just a couple of minutes ago, if in fact DACA turns out that those students cannot get state tuition, and the board decided we wanted to chip in to help them make up the difference between in-state and out-of-state tuition, we could do that. Now, what we have done over almost every year is that the Board of Visitors scholarship is funded by the university, but it only funds one scholarship. As you know, we always set and have a committee that talks to 3 candidates. I've done that a couple times. Many of you have been on that committee, and you know that it's almost impossible to pick that candidate because everybody's got an unbelievable story. So typically what we have done every year is we have taken from this particular fund, the Board of Visitors Fund, and provided some additional money for the second and third place people. So I will volunteer with Phoebe's help to send out a letter with maybe a little bit more detail to solicit you all. And especially if you're a new board member, it's a good idea, if you would please, just to make a contribution. Again, it doesn't have to be a gigantic contribution, and we certainly don't want to take anything away from what you might be doing in the big campaign as a member of that campaign committee. But every dollar counts, so even $500 here or whatever would count towards that. Last thing that I just think is a point of interest that I'll talk about is Keith asked at the last meeting where we stood in terms of minority and woman-owned vendors. And so Carol did some research on that, and I think she was shocked, and I was shocked when she told me, and I think the Finance Committee was shocked to find out that over the last several years, our use of women-owned and minority vendors is at about 45%. That is probably as good a number as you will find anywhere in the country. So we do a really, really good job of making sure that all of our contracts are out there for women-owned and minority type people, and we use them extensively. So I just wanted to point that out as something that Keith inquired about, and I think was good information. Again, we saw the dashboard, all the normal type things, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to talk about them, or Carol, or any of us. And that is my report, Madam Director.
Thank you. I know these items were very thoroughly vetted in committee, and unless there is discussion, I would like to hear a motion to approve the 6.
Question. Bill, is that last number you mentioned include small business, or is it simply women and minorities at 45%?
It also includes small business.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you. And is there any other discussion? Do I hear a motion to approve the 6 action items, the committee charter, the financial assumptions in the 6-year plan, the resolutions for financing, the selection of the architect/engineer, amendments to the 6-year plan for projects, and procurement procedures as a batch?
So moved.
Second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any against? Motion carries. Thank you. The next item is VCU's 6-year plan, and we'll ask Dr. Gail Hackett to give us.
Excuse me, Phoebe, I just want to ask Bill if it's important that we cover the 2 action items that took place in closed session.
Yes. Yes, we will cover them in closed session, and then we vote after closed session.
Thank you.
Now, is it, yes, there we go.
Good.
So you have the full 6-year plan in your materials. We're not going to go through the whole thing. Much of it should be very familiar. As Mr. Ginther was saying, this 6-year plan, we submit it once every 2 years and then amend it or approve it every other year. So this was a year where we submitted a new plan, although much of the plan was very similar to the plan we submitted 2 years ago. We submitted to a group called the Op6, which consists of the Secretary of Education, the Secretary of Finance, the Director of SHEV, the Director of the Virginia Department of Planning and Budget, and the chairs of the House and Senate Appropriations Committees. We did that this summer. They get their comments back to us by September 1st, which they did. There were very few comments, but we are following up on those. And then we submit a final plan by October 1st. What we're showing you today is a much cut down version of the presentation that we made this August to the Op6. Clearly, I think, yes?
They comment, but they don't necessarily approve or disapprove, is that right? I mean, it's
Correct.
information.
Yeah, the final plan is until October 1st, but you can tell, we have a rich discussion in the meeting, so we get a pretty good idea of how people are reacting, and they reacted pretty positively to the plan. Clearly, one of the very strongest points, as the president pointed out, of what we have been doing here at VCU is both the total number of degrees we're awarding, which has been augmented by our retention rates and the graduation rates that have been increasing over time due to our work on increasing student success. And of course, we are educating more undergraduate Virginia students than our Tier 3 peers, which is important. 89% of our students are in-state students. We will be shifting that somewhat as we grow our domestic out-of-state and international enrollments for financial reasons, as well as in terms of international students for globalization reasons, but we're not expecting that to shift so dramatically that we won't still be educating primarily Virginia students. And obviously, we are going to continue serving more students with need, and we define that as students below the poverty line. We've talked about this in depth in the Academic and Health Affairs Committee. I don't know that everybody has seen this, though. And again, we educate more Pell recipients, low-income students, than all of the other 3 Tier 3 schools combined. But of course, this presents us with a challenge. These are the latest data on unmet need, and this includes Pell students and the low-income students and students below the poverty line with unmet need, as well as other students with unmet need. Going on to other goals we have, we need to continue growing our tenure and tenure track faculty, both for instructional purposes of working with students, and also because it's our tenure and tenure track faculty primarily who are growing our research and innovation. And compensation is a real issue. The compensation for our faculty and staff are well below that of our peers and below some of the other Virginia 4-year institutions. So it's a constant struggle, and one that we know we need to continue to work at. Each year that we go without salary increases causes us to fall further behind. The other issue on the right-hand side is we have adjuncts on campus that are paid pitifully. And so what we're trying to do over time is increase the minimum rate for adjuncts. Our salaries, including what we pay adjuncts, vary by discipline, but we are trying to at least get the minimum rates up to a reasonable level. Marcia, do you want to say anything about this? Again, we had much more about all of these points in the original presentation. We're trying to be brief with you.
So the two areas of focus when we talked to Chev about where we want to go in the next 6 years and directly how we bring value to our partnership with the Commonwealth is around our health equity work. So what we discussed in our committee is the strength of our research in that area, nationally, internationally known here at VCU, building from that platform and work across the entire university as one university, both health system and all of our components on Monroe Park and the MCV campus, and working towards creating a visible improvement in the health of our people through addressing the health equities and inequity issues. It works for all of our missions as our component parts. It supports one of our strongest areas of research, and it provides opportunities for our students and our faculty to be engaged across the entire many dimensions of the university. And as one of our students made me think about how what we're doing is taking our excellence in our research and moving to using that research to solve problems. So we've created the map with the research done here at VCU and what are the health inequities our nation faces, and now we're about trying to solve some of those problems and change that map. The other area is, of course, our continuing work at Massey Cancer Center. It's relevant to people across the entire Commonwealth. Of course, we have referrals to our cancer center from the whole Commonwealth and also from 50 states across the country to our health system. So that's really important work that is very important to members of the General Assembly as well. So that's our focus moving forward.
One or two more.
Yes. Okay. So speaking about our research, we're very proud to say that we really exceeded ourselves in 2016, which was close of year where we had our last data from, continuing to move that bar up. But the thing we're extremely proud about is our rank in addiction medicine. We are 6th in the nation for funding in that area of research. And in our work in neuroscience, we are 31st in the nation, and we are top in Virginia. So despite the rhetoric that you hear about everyone being a neuroscience center, we have the peer review at the national level and the funding support to demonstrate that our activity is much greater in that area than anywhere else in the Commonwealth and ranks among the best in the nation. Our challenges in research, of course, are in our space. So 60+% of our research is happening in buildings that are more than 50 years old. So we're looking at plans to improve those facilities and create opportunities for us to recruit the next higher caliber of investigators to VCU. Okay. Innovation and entrepreneurship are things that, of course, we're very much supporting and excited about here at VCU. Half of our students want to start a company when they come here, and 15% already have. So that speaks to the kind of people we're attracting and the kind of people, of course, we think we need nationally to be graduating and joining our workforce in general. So we have programs, our pre-accelerator program, and our various centers and institutes that often have the more entrepreneurial spin-offs associated with them. We're now talking about our innovation gateway, looking at our invention disclosures up, our licensing revenues, 20 startups since 2011, and you can read just some examples, including 13 patents. But some of the work that is just now newly funded, as Mike mentioned, the Medicines for All in pharmaceutical engineering, have great capacity to generate some entrepreneurial activity that we need to be part of shaping and creating, so that we also reap the benefits of these things into the future. And of course, our work in health equity is really building on this issue, around the issue of social determinants, which strikes at the core of all of our missions here at VCU. And these are how they relate. It's not social service. We don't engage in this as a social service agency. We have systems in our government to address that. But what we say is, where do we learn from the activities that advance society? And that's where we want our student to be, on that problem-solving front in whatever workforce they join. And we do that by engaging them in this kind of work for the benefit of their education, for the research opportunities that presents, and that improves our patient care on the health system side and improves our community at large. Thank you. Thanks.
We also had to present some financial projections, and for the OP6, we were to assume no additional money from the state. And so here are some high-level views, and again, all of this is in your packet, but this is just a brief executive-level summary of the major initiatives and where we're expecting to, how we're expecting to fund those major initiatives without looking to the state for the funding. And finally, just a very brief summary of some of the capital expansion on the campuses. So is there anything anyone would like to ask, or anything you'd like to discuss, and my colleagues can help with handling those questions?
Hearing no discussion, we thank you for that very thorough report, and I would ask for a motion to approve the 6-year plan as found in the board materials, and to authorize the university to amend this as appropriate based on Chev's comments, and to file it with Chev by October 1st, 2017. Do I hear a motion?
Move it.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is carried. Dr. Haggett, we'll call on you again now to present the new strategic plan update.
Dr. Rapley and I are co-chairing the new strategic planning effort, as I think everyone knows by now. And I'd like to remind everybody that we also have 2 board members on our steering committee. They have been great help, Carol Shapiro and Jackie Stone. What we'd like to do, to mix it up a little bit so you don't get too bored, is I'll talk a little bit about our progress to date, and then we have work group chairs to briefly, and we have told them it needs to be very brief, give you a summary of some of the progress that they've been making, and give you a chance to talk to the work group chairs about any questions or you have, or make comments directly to some of the work group chairs. So right now we are finishing up the first phase of the strategic plan, which is our work on goals and themes. The timing of our reports is a little off. We were hoping to have our steering committee meeting first and then report to you. That didn't work out, so we're reporting to you, and then we have our steering committee meeting at the end of, well, in 2 weeks. And at that steering committee meeting, the work groups will all make their presentations about where they are with finalizing their presentations on high-level goals and themes. And then in October, we'll be sharing that with campus and community, getting more feedback and finalizing that level of the strategic plan and moving quickly into the second phase, which is the implementation, developing the implementation plans for the strategic plan. By that I mean priorities, timeline, resources needed, and specific strategies to implement the timeline. So that's basically where we are. And what I'm going to do now is introduce the chair or chairs of each of the 5 work groups and let them talk to you just, again, very briefly about what they've been doing, and then take a couple of questions and then move to the next work group. Okay? The first work group is working on the challenge of national prominence. And by that, we don't mean rankings only. We're talking about how VCU can distinguish itself nationally and internationally. Chairs are Monse Fuentes, Dean of Humanities and Sciences, and Peter Buckley, the Dean of Medicine.
Gail, we're going to keep this to 20 minutes each of us.
Well, good afternoon. Peter and I have the opportunity to work on strategies to help our institution to elevate our national prominence. So what we're trying to do is to set goals, priorities, by going back to who we are as an institution, as an urban research, very highly engaged in our community, university with a very comprehensive health sciences campus, with a very distinctive group of students, first generation, underserved population, and with a clear commitment to our community and to real world learning, and very highly recognized programs in arts and also in health sciences. With all that in mind, the strategy has been to focus on 4 primary missions: our research, our education, and on strategies to help bring more recognition to our faculty and students, and a very focused communication strategy. So we have four different task forces that are working on setting priorities under the 4 different categories. So what I'm going to do briefly is to explain some of the strategies that we already have in place, primarily in the context of research that is being integrated in everything else that we do. So we have looked at who we are as an institution and identify peer institutions, primarily in the context also of the resources that they have. So we are working with 6 institutions as peers: South Carolina, South Florida, Illinois, Louisville, Alabama, and Cincinnati. And what I'm showing you here is a benchmark to understand where we are in the context of our Research One mission as a very highly active institution in research. There are 2 primary metrics that are being used in establishing that status, and is the PhD production and is the research funds that we bring. So in relation to our peers, that's what you see here in the graphs. In yellow is VCU. So we are trailing our peers in the context of PhDs and research expenditures. However, we do have a large ratio of undergrads to tenure track faculty. We are promoting, as you have heard, bringing more tenure track faculty and a little more infrastructure for graduate students to help us elevate the national prominence and our research mission. In the context of strategies, priorities, goals that are achievable, measurable, that can help us to promote who we are and bring more distinction, we have identified 3 areas where we already have strength and recognition, and that can really help us to continue enhancing what we do. One of them is addiction. We have 3 people dying every day in Virginia, in our state, due to drug overdose. 91 nationwide. It's obviously a very important societal problem where we have clear strength in our educational mission and in our research. Sustainability, another area where the university has already invested. We have been very successful, and we need to continue making that a priority. And then children's health. an area to continue promoting our community engagement and who we are as an institution, all of the very much interdisciplinary opportunities for us to continue enhancing our national prominence. Thank you.
Maybe for the sake of time, we should have the chairs give their comments and then entertain questions. Phoebe, would that be better? Okay, we'll do that. Okay. For this group working on work group for student success, Chuck Klink is one of the co-chairs.
Good afternoon. So I'm a co-chair with Dr. Barksdale, who wasn't able to be here, and she's in the School of Nursing. So one of the things that we've been looking at is that our students come with many gifts, talents, and potential, but we really feel like VCU serves as a catalyst by providing access and opportunity, and that we have some exceptional curricular and co-curricular experiences that we offer them. We've identified a couple themes in our group, and we'll be finalizing those. We have 3 preliminary goals that we're working on, and we have a number of operational task groups that we've launched that are looking at some different subpopulations of students as well as some other innovative programs that we might be able to take a look at. The things that we feel make us distinctive, and Peter Monti mentioned these, are our premier research national university rankings, our capitalizing on our urban location, and then our ability to connect students' academic learning with real-world experiences and preparing them as global citizens. So again, there's this theme of internationalization that is embedded in that as well.
Thanks, Chuck. We have a work group called Culture of Appreciation, and Kevin Harris is going to tell us about that.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Provost. I have the pleasure of chairing this work group with Dr. Andrew Dare, who's Dean of our School of Education. So what we quickly came to a conclusion in our first work group meeting is that we wanted to shift our current culture of appreciation from an emphasis on rewards and recognition to more of an emphasis on sort of day-to-day or daily expressions of appreciation, not the obligatory type or the sort of pedestrian type, but really genuine and authentic appreciation. And so these 3 aims can really be summarized as leading up to that particular goal. We launched 2 task groups, and it's worth noting the interest that we gained from the community of our colleagues. It was a tremendous amount of activity there. And so we were able to mount 2 task groups, first looking at an inventory of what VCU is already doing. We felt that departments and units were already involved in efforts to create a culture of appreciation. And we wanted to make sure that we captured that in an inventory so that we know what our platform is. And then second, we charged the group with really reaching out into the community writ large and through literature, phone calls, web searches to find out what are some of the promising practices and even possibly best practices that can then further inform the thinking that we would do as a work group. We came up with 9 preliminary goals. We submitted those forward. They really fit within the themes of creating a sense of belongingness, connecting to that day-to-day expressions of appreciation, and then also creating an atmosphere of true trust and respect. We feel if we can pull this off, and I think a big component of that, as we've discussed, would be finding relevant metrics that really can capture the ongoing nature of the framework that we're putting forward, this sort of day-to-day capturing those expressions of appreciation. And then connecting to that, we want to make sure that we are also connected to what we learned from our Great Place Initiative survey, which really emphasized the importance of trust, or the need, quite frankly, for trust and respect throughout both our faculty, staff, and our students. So we want to make sure that we weave that into the framework that we create. We also want to make sure that we're measuring the way that we're shifting our culture. And again, it goes back to the metrics that I referenced before. And how do we make sure that we also align with the work that our diversity, leveraging diversity group is doing. We felt that culture and diversity certainly go hand in hand. And as that initiative evolves, we want to make sure that we're evolving in a commensurate way. And then finally, we're connecting with our HR redesign. They're doing a tremendous amount of work grounded in research around performance-based metrics, and they're just really developing human capital. And we want to plug into that effort that they're doing to make sure, again, that we're evolving at the pace that they are evolving.
We have a work group that's focusing on leveraging diversity, and this is about not only trying to make sure that our diversity and inclusion action plan is connected to our strategic plan, but also making sure that diversity and inclusion are embedded throughout the strategic plan. So Laura Ruggless and Roz Hobson-Hargraves, I want to make sure I get her two names right. Sometimes I reverse them, sorry. So Laura and Roz will talk about that.
Hi, good afternoon. We recognized early on that the multitude of other plans that speak to diversity really needed to be aligned. And we thought of our focus as really activating one of the very best things about VCU, which is its diversity, in alignment with those other plans and integrated throughout the other themes of the strategic plan, as Kevin talked about. And so in recognition of that, or operationalization of that, we had two of our work group members assigned to each of the other work groups, and it became a kind of a two-way conduit of information for us. The Diversity and Inclusion Strategic Action Plan, which I know you're all very familiar with, having just approved that, is a central part of the connectivity that we need to make through this theme. And our aim also reflected the need for a collective impact model, which we won't go into depth about today, but will be reflected in the theme as we develop it further. Lastly, our task force, we came up with a sort of an interesting assignment for them to be informed by other institutional approaches. We identified about 20 institutions that we wanted to take a close look at. So we weren't bound by these approaches or led by them, but we are informed by them, and we've got a lot of good information through that effort.
And so all of that work informed the 5 goals that we developed as a work group. And we came up with ways in which we felt were best articulated. And so we used embracing difference. And by that we mean that individuals come to VCU with various ideas, experiences, and strengths, and these should be seen as assets. That everyone can be who they are without having judgment assigned because of who they are or who they are perceived to be. And then around engaging difference, we felt that VCU should be a place where everyone can hear their own voice in the larger university narrative. And around empowering difference, as you see there's a theme, engaging difference, embracing difference, empowering difference. Around empowering difference, that VCU is an organization where students and employees know that they can be successful. And this ties closely into that culture of appreciation. We see that VCU is a place where they can achieve their goals, and really that VCU has an invested interest in their success. And then around ownership, and in many ways this came out of our climate survey back in 2016, where 91% of the respondents felt that they had a responsibility to work towards an inclusive and diverse university. We are VCU, and our community belongs to us, and we are our community. And then finally, and there's this excitement about who VCU is as an optimism that we can indeed be a beacon for other institutions with respect to diversity and inclusion. So we see VCU as becoming a role model for other universities to follow.
Thank you. And the last work group is local impact and social embeddedness, community engagement. And Cheryl Garland is going to talk about that. She's one of the co-chairs.
Thank you. I am co-chairing this committee along with Dr. Tim Davies, Interim Dean for School of Social Work. And we're excited that we have pulled together a diverse group of individuals from across both campuses who've been helping us to think about how it is that we can engage the resources across the university and the health system to really address some of the needs that have been identified by the community that we are a part of. To date, what we have done is we have received feedback from the internal town halls across the university, our task force has spent some time thinking about what are some of the critical areas where we can really make a difference. But we felt like if we were going to be genuine in this process, that we really needed to integrate the voices of the community into the process. And so we came up with 5 themes and then invited co-chairs from both VCU and the community to help lead the discussion around how it is we develop our goals. And so those task groups are now in the process of outlining the areas around these 5 areas that you see, or 5 focal points that you see listed on the slide. You will note that health is not listed here, even though it is one of our priority areas for the university. And what our team decided is that rather than create a separate group, that we needed to align our discussions around health with the health equity plan that Dr. Rapley mentioned to you a few minutes ago. We felt like there was a great deal of alignment and a great deal of continuity between what it is we need to do when we're thinking about health equity and the impact that we could make in the community. And then finally, we want to be very thoughtful in regards to the outcomes that we measure as a part of the strategic planning process. What our group acknowledged, however, is that there are documented indicators, many that have been created by several groups within the university in collaboration with community organizations. And therefore, we felt it was important to spend some time researching what those documented indicators are and to figure out if they can be aligned with the strategic planning process. So how will we make a difference? Well, we started with the idea that we could better align and better connect the resources from across the university to really make an impact in our region. But we wanted to be thoughtful and think about the ways that we could build upon the excellent work that we have done throughout our community engagement strategies over the years. We decided that there were several key areas that we needed to think about. First of all, that diversity and inclusion is integrated into what we do, that this truly is an interdisciplinary approach, so it builds on the themes that you've heard from the other co-chairs so far. And the student learning component is really critical because we feel like this is an opportunity to build on the real vision that Dr. Rao mentioned a few minutes ago. And probably more importantly in this process is that whatever that we are doing through the strategic planning activity needs to be with the lens of developing an equitable partnership with the community organizations that we feel are critical in helping us to move this agenda forward. Thank you.
So thank you to all of the chairs. I'd like to invite the board to make comments, ask questions.
Thank you. I have less of a question and more of an offer, so I apologize, it's not exactly what you're asking for. But for graduate students, I recall in the spring, the committee often hosted town halls for students to come out, and I wanted to put the offer out there to any of the work group chairs or anyone else on the committee, that if you want more graduate student participation, I know for some of the town halls, it's hard often for graduate students to attend because you're on rounds, you're working, it's a different schedule. As the ex-president of the medical student government, I can tell you that every school actually has its own government, and if any of you would like to get in contact with graduate students, specifically within their own disciplines, to contact them, I'd be happy to serve as a resource. School of Medicine, for example, has 10 executive officers, 92 class officers that all get together once a month. And I think it'd be wonderful if some of you could go and speak to them directly. Pharmacy, dental, all the other programs have very similar structures within their schools. So if that's something that's interesting to you, please feel free to reach out to me and I'd be happy to get you in contact.
That's great, thank you.
Keith, are you trying to do something? Are you doing it? No, okay. I'll direct it to you. So what is the difference between the culture task force and the diversity task force? Because their goals seem to overlap a lot.
They could. I think the culture of appreciation is broader in the sense that it's looking at, you know, the kinds of things that say, that an HR Great Place Initiative might look at, but we want we want the group to look more broadly. So it's how do we, and it could be linked, say, to we've got some challenges with retaining faculty and especially. So what do we do to make everyone on campus feel appreciated? What do we do to make people feel that they're valued and so forth? So yeah, I think there is overlap, but there may be some usefulness for both of those groups. So, but I think the groups see themselves as distinct. Does somebody in one of the groups want to talk about it?
Sure, we did put some thought to that as a performing group, and in fact, we integrated the idea of every university to have one of their work.
Can you get a mic?
Sure.
Maybe somebody right
I
here.
can speak louder. I can amplify. So we did consider that in the cultural appreciation group when we, at the onset, and actually took advantage of an idea from leveraging diversity and had one of their work group members participate in our work group as a standing member so that we can, one, keep that continuity, but also look for those areas of distinction between our work. The work that we are doing is actually more of a subset of what that broader diversity work would be doing. And it's really more so focusing on, again, primarily building that atmosphere of collaboration and respect from a human capital sort of perspective. And so it's really a very narrow piece. If it was wrapped into the broader diversity arena, we felt that we might lose some opportunities to really build that work up. So that's the decision we made, and so far it's kind of working, although very much overlapping.
Thank you.
Yeah, a lot of good ideas. I thought when you're talking about the engagement and impact, it would be useful to use categories that people out in the world can understand. Economic development, public safety, housing, things that don't appear to be so jargonistic a little bit. And then secondly, I hope that at the end there are some big ideas here, not just sort of a collection of smaller things that people do, that at the end, particularly on the engagement and impact, we're saying something large that we can do.
Yeah, Gail, I liked everything I saw. I guess what I didn't like is what I didn't see, and maybe it's in there somewhere and it's all going to come out. It just seems to me that, you know, we have to think about the university of the future and the student of the future. And we know that people are burdened by too much debt, that tuition is too expensive, that, you know, we need to find ways to better compensate the faculty, you know, and we need, you know, hopefully to reduce tuition, not increase tuition. So I'm wondering where the more practical piece is that results in that. As an example, I mean, if you think about a student, one way you pay for your education is you work while you go to school. So if this were the university that allowed me to take 9 hours in the fall, 3 hours over the holidays, 9 hours in the spring, and 9 hours over the summer, I'd have 30 hours in 1 year. And if I'm working, you know, I'm not necessarily caring that much about all the vacation that might be out there that people want. And, you know, I might be able to pay as I go and not borrow any money. And, you know, we would use our buildings more. You know, we would spread our faculty load better, you know. Are we going to get to any of that, I guess is my question?
We may may get some of that. There are some things we're doing, we're already doing and planning, and there's some of that may come out in the strategic plan. Yeah.
Are there any other comments or questions? Well, Dr. Hackett, thank you so much for this presentation. And we'll now move on to the Academic and Health Affairs Committee, so ably led by Dr. Carol Shapiro. And ask for her report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The first item of business was a report from Provost Hackett demonstrating a dashboard report on research numbers. And as you heard earlier, and I'm not going to embellish that, we have increased our amount of research funding by $4 million, so we're up to $275 million. It's distributed with 55% on the MCV campus and 39% on the Monroe Park campus. But I think it's important, I think we've all been aware of the research grants that come to the health professions, but we broke this down, and 39% of our total grants are coming to us from our arts department, humanities and sciences, education, engineering, and social work. And that's pretty impressive, and I think everybody needs to be very much aware of that. More than half of those grants are federal, 51% from NIH and other federal agencies, and we are nationally ranked for neurosciences and addiction studies. We also looked at the report for the students in the entering cohort. We will have 3,775 full-time students, first-time students, and a 1% increase in the 6-year graduation rate, which is now 63%. And that's almost 20% increase in the last 5 years. Although our numbers are up for graduation, our enrollment numbers are slightly down by 744 students. We are looking at a new focus on recruitment in specific areas, including international, out-of-state, and transfers. And we are definitely looking at ways to increase the huge need for financial aid at this time. Master levels enrollment is also of concern, but the new budget model will provide incentives for academic units to enhance and expand the master's program. We had a really interesting and good discussion on some of the broader issues of higher education in the United States. The national goals suggest that 60% of the populace can and should have post-secondary degree within the next 10 years, and that's actually not going to happen. Many colleges and universities are focusing on looking at students, accepting students within the top 2 economic quartiles. And historically, it is these 2 quartiles that have seen growth in attainment over the past years, 10 years. We actually are serving the lower 2 quartiles. That's affecting many things when rankings are accomplished, or they're looking at the time of graduation, or they're looking at how many students are full-time students and carrying a full load. I invite you to look at the handout that you got at your place. It's really an eye-opening piece of literature that just recently came out, and it talks about the influence and the differences in college rankings and what is influencing it at this time. And again, you've heard some of that referred to this morning by Dr. Rao and Dr. Hackett. We are looking at positioning in VCU as a leader in the area of a research community, but we need to become the definitive source of information on this topic. We had Dr. Rapley present on the health equity plan. This is the plan that went into effect in September of last year. She talked about step 1, which was mapping the problem, exploring the social determinants affecting health, and then the second step of solving the problems through training and education, research, scholarly activities, patient care services, and community engagement. We were pleased to meet our new Faculty Senate representative, Holly Alford, and our alternate representative, who is the new president of the Senate, Scott Street. We also met our new staff representative, Lauren Kachuk. And finally, as you know, we met our 2 new students from both the undergraduate and graduate sides of our community. They presented us with a wonderful slide presentation of how new students were welcome to VCU on both campuses. And I think that I thought about Colette's question about the difference between culture and diversity, and actually I think that that slide presentation was an incredible example of culture and the warmth and the effort that went into both campuses in different ways of welcoming new students to the campus. And it was heartwarming, and it was excellent and impressive to see the work that was being done by the older students. The other thing about from the students was the fact that there is now only one Senate on our campus. There is, they will be representing both sides of the university. We are VCU 1, or 1 VCU. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that report. Our next report will be the Audit Committee with our new chair, Keith Parker.
Good afternoon. The Audit, Integrity, and Compliance Committee met this morning and received several updates from Bill Cole as required by the committee charter. One was the annual review of the department charter, which is the board's authorization and charge to the internal audit and compliance function. The charter only included one significant revision, and that is to now review the information technology management and security within the department's scope of work. At the end of my comments, I'll ask for action to accept the updated charter. The group also reviewed the annual goals. There were no changes to the FY18. There were no changes from FY17 to FY18 for the goals. We also looked at the dashboard measures. All were green except 2. They were the data security and compliance oversight. Those 2 remain yellow, as just about every business and government would have those items. We also took a look at the staff credentials and the department budget. The budget largely remained unchanged except for the about 3% increase that all accepted, and Bill's staff is pretty stable. We then heard and received the enterprise risk management update from Tom Briggs, and his report looked at a number of different risks and identified those risks for the different university owners. All of those will be shared with the cabinet before moving forward. We then heard a very good report from Jacqueline Niska, the university's compliance officer, and her report, which is included in your packet, the full executive summary, looked at a number of different aspects of the university's integrity and compliance activities. One area of received a significant amount of attention was the number of, or percentage of out-of-date policies. The university currently has more than 50% of its policies are out of date, some of which are more than 6 years out of date. Dr. Rao acknowledged that this will be a focus area to get into compliance as the university moves forward. The rest of my actually I will ask for action on the, where are we?
The Audit and Compliance Services Charter?
On the charter, yes, ma'am.
Is there a motion to approve the Audit and Compliance Services Charter?
So moved.
A second? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, the motion then carries. Thank you. Thank you for your report, and now we'll move to John Luke with the Governance and Compensation Committee report.
Thank you. We met this morning in an open session. We began with Michelle Schumacher reviewing the committee's charter, meeting planner, and dashboard. Michelle also provided the committee with a revised presidential evaluation policy, which we will review and consider more formally at our December meeting. There are two items that were included in your board materials. One was the planner, the other was the charter. The charter, as in the case of all of the other committees, does require approval of the board. And so, Madam Rector, I would, on behalf of the committee, move its approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The motion carries.
Thank you, and I would just conclude by saying that most of our work this morning was conducted in closed session, and we'll report on that later in the agenda.
Thank you so much. Our next report, and we are really trying to move the afternoon along and appreciate everyone's efforts to do that. Our next report will be the University Resources Committee report. I'll call on Tyrone Nelson for that report.
Yes, thank you. Chaired the meeting in the absence of our chair, Rick Wagner. We did have a meeting this morning and focused on a couple of areas. First was government relations. Matt Conrad and Kara Gunther provided an update. The updates surrounded their new government relations fiscal year 18 plan that was developed over the summer. They also provided an update on state, local, and federal activities. Much work has been done in advance as it relates to the government relations team of the 2017 general election, at which time we'll elect a new governor, lieutenant governor, and attorney general. All 100 House of Delegate members are also up for re-election. Staff will work closely with the incoming administration and legislative leadership between now and January to ensure VCU strategic priorities as found in our 6-year plan are reflected in the Commonwealth's new biannual budget. As it relates to university relations, Pam Lapley presented the strategy behind this year's Make It Real campaign. We had the opportunity to preview some of the advertising concepts. We know that the goals of the campaign are to elevate VCU's brand awareness, encourage interaction with the brand, and to start prospective students on their college decision-making journey early, and then to move the needle in getting people to take action to apply to VCU. The primary audience are prospective students who are usually sophomores through seniors in high school. Secondary audiences are influencers, alumni, peers, parents, greater Richmond area. The media strategy has 4 components: breaking through the clutter and engage, embrace attendance trends, find a way to leverage social media early, and pulse advertising flights. The campaign is highly metric driven, so the campaign can be adjusted along the way for optimum effectiveness. The advertising creative continues the "This is my real" theme, which I'm sure you'll be seeing a lot of that, whether it's through commercials, social media, or going to the Make It Real website. Last report we heard in open session was from Ed Greer and Chris. I don't want to mess up your last name, so I won't say it. Ed and Chris provided a summary of fundraising activities. Ed introduced our new Vice President, Jay Davenport. Dr. Rao also introduced him during this meeting. VCU finished the fiscal year at $505 million, and as of today, the campaign is at $536 million, headed toward a $750 million goal. The number of alumni making new gifts in fiscal year 17 was up 14% over this time last year. We have 86,000 donors to the Make It Real campaign, and there is an alumni engagement research project underway with Southeastern Institute of Research. And we don't have any items in open session to act on.
Well, thank you so much for that report and for chairing the committee today. At this point in time, it's time to convene in closed session. So I move that the Board of Visitors of Virginia Commonwealth University convene a closed session under Section 2.2, 3711A 139, 11, 23, and 29 of the Freedom of Information Act for the discussion of personnel matters, more specifically relating to the performance, evaluation, and/or compensation of the President of Virginia Commonwealth University and various faculty members, and the evaluation of performance of departments or schools of public institutions of higher education, where such evaluation will necessarily involve discussion of the performance of specific individuals. Also, the acquisition of real property for a public purpose or of the disposition of publicly held real property, where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the university. For the discussion of gifts, bequests, and fundraising activities of Virginia Commonwealth University, namely the named funds and spaces report and the approved named funds under $50,000 report. For discussion or consideration of honorary degrees or special awards to be given at the December 2017 and May 2018 commencement ceremonies. For discussion related to Virginia Commonwealth University Health System Authority, specifically qualifications and evaluations of members of its staff, and discussion of its marketing or operational strategies or operational plans, and discussion of the award of a public contract involving the expenditure of public funds, including the discussion of terms or scope of such contract. Do I hear a second? Thank you. All in favor? Aye. The motion carried.
I'm going to ask you to repeat that.
Glad.